Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're stepping into a side of architecture you might not think about every day. It's not about the buildings themselves, but how those firms make sure their work, their style, lives on, even after the people who started it all are gone. We're talking succession planning, specifically in architecture firms.
Yeah, you see this challenge a lot in fields where reputation and specialized knowledge are everything. How do you pass the torch without the flame going out? We've got 5 main ways firms tackle this, and we'll get into the pros, cons, what to watch out for with each.
Okay, so before we jump into those options, why is this succession planning so important specifically for architecture firms? It's not just any business, right?
Right. Imagine this. You've spent decades building your firm. You've got loyal clients, an amazing team. Without a plan, all that could just vanish when you retire. It's about protecting that founder's legacy, the clients they serve, the livelihoods of their staff.
Makes sense. It's like what happens to that architect's signature style? There's a gap nobody else could fill.
Exactly. And it's super important for those firms that are sole proprietorships or partnerships. Who owns the firm is the whole ball game. Years of work could just dissolve if there's no plan.
All right, so let's get into those options. First path a firm might consider.
Sometimes the choice is actually dissolving the firm when the lead architect retires.
Dissolving. Whoa, seems drastic. Why would anyone choose that?
It's not always a bad thing, you know? Could be the founder's personal choice, a clean break to enjoy retirement. Or sometimes it's health reasons, partnership disputes that just can't be worked out, even life throwing a curveball.
So it's about control, even if it means ending things on their terms. But even then, you can't just walk away, right? What about all the drawings, the project files, all that history?
Great point. Even if a firm is dissolving, archiving everything properly is vital. It's not just preserving history, but protection against potential lawsuits later on. Some architecture associations even have rules about how long you got to keep those records.
Wow, so there's a whole legal and historical angle to this. Didn't think filing paperwork was so architectural.
Indeed. But let's say a firm doesn't want to disappear. That's where selling the practice comes in. Another architect, a group, investors, they could buy the existing firm.
Change of ownership, not a shutdown. What's the good side of doing that?
For the founder, it can be a way to get some financial reward for all those years of work. And done right, it can keep the firm's legacy going, even under new leadership.
But handing over control of something you build, that's got to be tough, right? What are the downsides there?
You're right, that loss of control is huge. New owners might have different design philosophies, ways of working with clients, even a different company culture entirely.
It's a trade-off then. Financial security, but maybe less say in what happens to the firm going forward.
Now, here's something interesting. It's actually pretty common in these sales for the founder to stick around as an advisor during the transition.
Wait, even after selling, they're still there. Why do that?
It's all about making things smooth, that continuity, that founder's experience, their relationships. Those are valuable. Clients feel reassured. Staff adjust easier. It can be a win for everyone.
Smart move. Okay, so we've covered dissolving, selling. What else is on the table?
Merging with another practice is a big one, especially if there's nobody within the firm ready to take over.
So instead of one taking over, they join forces. I can see the appeal there.
Absolutely. Think of it like 2 design styles coming together, creating something even stronger. They can tap into new markets, get more talent, become more competitive. It's a lot like mergers in other industries, that idea of combined strength.
But I bet those mergers can be messy too. What can go wrong there?
Oh, plenty. Sometimes the firm cultures clash, their computer systems don't work together. You can even end up with too many people doing the same job.
Ouch, sounds like a headache. So merging, that takes extra careful planning.
You got it. That's why some firms try out joint ventures or strategic alliances first, like a test run before you fully commit.
Dip your toes in the water before diving in. I like that. So far, it's all outsiders. What about when the solution is already inside the firm?
That's our next option, internal succession. Ownership goes to existing partners or shareholders.
Promoting from within. Sounds like a great way to keep the firm's culture going strong.
You're right. Plus, another advantage here, internal buyers, they often value the firm more than outsiders would. It's because of goodwill.
Goodwill. Is that like everyone being in a good mood about it?
Not quite. It's the value of the firm's reputation, those client relationships, the brand. They've built things you can't touch, but they're worth a lot. Internal buyers, they helped create that goodwill so they know what it's truly worth.
So it's not just the stuff, it's the firm's story, what makes them unique.
Exactly. But this only works if there's already a strong leadership team in place. those existing partners got to be ready to take charge.
More than just talented architects, they got to be leaders too.
Now, our final option is kind of a mix of internal and external, bringing in new partners or shareholders, but from outside the firm. This brings in fresh perspectives to the leadership.
Shaking things up a bit while still planning for the long haul. What's the good part of that?
It's all about growth and adapting. New partners with different skills, they can help the firm change as the market changes. Like adding new spices to a recipe, you keep the main flavor, but make it even better.
I like that. But wouldn't money be tricky? How do these new partners afford to buy in, especially in an established firm?
There are ways to handle that. One interesting one is a sinking fund, basically. Money set aside specifically to help new partners buy in and eventually pay out the founding partners over time.
So it spreads the cost out, makes the transition smoother. Clever. Now, whether it's internal or bringing in new folks, there's this common thread, the HR side of things.
Ah, you've hit on a crucial but often overlooked part. Succession planning isn't a quick fix. It's about looking ahead, sometimes 10 years or more. And HR, they're at the heart of that.
So it's not just filling a job opening. It's making sure there are future leaders for the firm.
Right. It starts with what we call stage one, strategic planning. The firm figures out its culture, its values, where it wants to go. Then they make a plan that connects every part of the business: HR, money, marketing, the works.
Like designing the firm's future, not just the buildings it makes.
Exactly. Then comes stage two, talent pool development. That's where you look at your current staff, see who has leadership potential, and recruit strategically to fill any gaps.
Building up that bench of talent, ready to step up.
Yeah.
But what about firms that worry, if they train their people too well, they'll just leave and become the competition? Doesn't that happen?
There's this great quote by Zig Ziglar. The only thing worse than training your employees and losing them is not training them and keeping them.
Ouch. Good point. Better to have skilled people even if some move on.
Exactly. And that brings us to stage three, selection and transition. This is where those successors are chosen. They get management training, leadership development, and they're introduced to important clients so everything goes smoothly. Like an architect, carefully handing off their best blueprints.
It's about making sure that design, that vision carries on. But even with the best plans, life happens. What about those unexpected situations?
That's why contingency planning is so important. Be ready for anything: sudden illness, a partner dispute that can't be resolved, even if someone key passes away. Having backup plans, knowing who does what if things go wrong, that's how firms weather the storm.
Resilience built right into the plan. Okay, we talked people, but what about the legal stuff? Contracts, all that.
Ah, yes, the legal foundation. Shareholder agreements, partnership agreements, they're crucial. Think of them as the blueprint for how ownership works, and you absolutely need a lawyer who specializes in this stuff.
So not just a handshake deal, got to get those contracts right. What should firms pay close attention to in those agreements?
Clarity above all else. Those agreements need to be airtight, especially when it comes to what happens if things go bad, whether it's culture clash or someone's not performing. And regular checkups are important, especially as new partners come in.
So it's a living document. It changes as the firm changes.
Now let's talk about something that can be tricky. Liability for work done in the past.
Ooh, that sounds like a legal maze. What should architects be aware of there?
Usually liability stays with the firm, even if ownership changes, but there are cases where insurance, or laws in some places, might still hold the original architect responsible. Getting good legal advice is key to understanding your situation and protecting yourself.
So even after retiring, an architect's past work can still impact them. That's a lot to think about.
Speaking of responsibility, let's talk money. How you pay for these ownership transitions, that can get complicated.
Yeah, walk me through it. It's not just writing a check, right?
Take internal partners buying out the founder. They might have their own debts, like anyone else, mortgages, loans, all that. Financing a buyout on top of that can be tough.
So agreeing on a price is one thing, but actually making it work financially, that's another story.
Right. That's why having the firm be really profitable during the transition helps. Buyers can use things like bigger salaries or bonuses to help with the purchase. And that sinking fund we mentioned, that can be a lifesaver, a structured way to pay over time.
Lots of moving parts on the financial side, it seems.
And that brings us to another big one. How do you even figure out what a firm is worth? That's where valuation comes in, and it's not as simple as you might think.
Yeah, it's not like you can just slap a price tag on the firm's reputation, right?
You're right. There are several ways to value a practice. There's earnings capitalization, which looks at future earnings. Then there's discounted cash flow, which looks at future cash but considers what money's worth today. And don't forget extra assets, anything beyond what's needed day to day. And then there's that tricky goodwill concept we mentioned earlier.
So it's more than adding up the cost of computers and desks. You need an expert for this, right?
Absolutely. Professional advice is a must. Now let's dig deeper into that goodwill idea because it's huge in valuation, especially for architects.
Remind me what goodwill is again and why it matters so much here.
Goodwill is basically the intangible value of a firm. It's their reputation, client relationships, brand recognition, the stuff you can't touch but that makes clients choose them over someone else. It's the magic that often makes a firm worth more than just its physical stuff.
Like having a famous architect's name on the door or their unique style that everyone wants.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Goodwill, it's subjective. Sellers and buyers see it differently. Founders, they've poured their heart into the firm. They tend to overvalue goodwill because it's emotional for them.
They see all those years of work, the risks they took to build that reputation.
Right. Buyers, especially those coming from outside, they often undervalue goodwill. They're focused on numbers and might not fully grasp the invisible value.
So how do you bridge that gap? How do you figure out what goodwill is really worth?
It's not enough to just say, we have goodwill. You need proof.
Proof? Like what?
Think about client retention. How many keep coming back? Testimonials they've given, awards the firm's won, even just their overall reputation in the community. These are signs of that intangible value.
You're making the magic measurable in a way.
Exactly. And that's where those valuation pros come in. They can put a number on goodwill based on data and industry standards, helping to bridge that gap between the seller's emotions and what the buyer needs to see.
It's like taking a feeling and turning it into a dollar amount. Impressive.
And not all goodwill is created equal. Some is easier to transfer than others.
What do you mean?
Imagine a firm that's successful because the founder is super charismatic, has all these personal connections. That kind of goodwill is hard to pass on because it's tied to them, not the firm itself.
Like a celebrity chef's restaurant. Their fame draws the crowds, but if they leave, that doesn't automatically go to the new owner.
Exactly. But if a firm's built on consistently great work, innovative design, top-notch client service, that goodwill is more likely to transfer because it's part of the firm's DNA.
So it's about building a legacy that's bigger than any one person, creating something that lasts.
Precisely. That's why that strategic planning, talent development, a strong company culture, those are so important. They build sustainable goodwill that helps a firm through leadership changes and beyond. It's like building a house that's meant to stand for generations.
This is fascinating. Never realized how much goes into planning for the future of an architecture firm. It's more than just designing buildings, it's designing the firm's future itself.
You got it. And it all comes down to people. Architecture is a service industry. At its core, it's the people, their expertise that drives success.
So how do you find and nurture that talent? It's one thing to spot potential, but how do you actually make it grow?
That's where mentorship and professional development programs really come into play. Think back to internal succession. One advantage is those potential successors are already there. They know the culture, the values, and they've learned from the more experienced people in the firm.
It's like an apprenticeship, right? Passing knowledge from one generation to the next, except instead of chisels and stone, it's software and building codes.
Exactly. And mentorship is key. Having a senior architect guide a younger colleague, share what they've learned, that makes a huge difference.
Like having someone to walk you through those tough early career projects and show you how the business side works too, not just the design.
Right. It's not just about technical skills. It's about developing leadership, strategic thinking, understanding how the business of architecture actually functions.
So you're creating well-rounded architects, not just amazing designers, but people who could run a firm one day.
Now, alongside mentorship, there are those professional development programs. These can be training on all sorts of things: project management, finances, how to talk to clients, negotiation skills. It's giving those future leaders the tools they'll need.
Makes sense. And those programs, they can take different forms, right? Not just sitting in a classroom.
Oh, absolutely. Workshops within the firm, seminars, conferences, even getting certifications. It's about having a mix of learning tailored to what each person needs and wants for their career. It's an investment that pays off big time later on.
Speaking of investment, let's talk about something that's often messed up, even when the intentions are good. Communication. Where does that fit into this whole succession puzzle?
Communication is vital. Think about all the people involved, employees wondering about their future, clients worried about their projects, maybe investors looking at the firm's stability. Being open, honest, communicating clearly, that builds trust.
So it's about keeping everyone informed, being upfront about the plan, and addressing those worries directly.
Exactly. You got to explain the firm's vision for the future, what the succession plan is, answer any questions. It's tricky, especially when there's sensitive stuff involved. But when it's done well, communication makes the whole process smoother and ultimately more successful.
So it's not just having the plan, it's making sure everyone gets it and feels okay with it.
Now, we touched on liability earlier, but there's more to think about legally, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. What else should firms be careful about on that side of things?
How the firm is set up legally matters a lot. Is it a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a corporation? Each one has different rules for transferring ownership, taxes, who's protected if things go wrong. You gotta have a lawyer who knows this stuff inside and out.
So someone who speaks both legalese and architect. What about the actual contracts, those agreements? What's important there?
Those agreements, things like shareholder agreements, buy-sell agreements, those
Right.
got to be rock solid, especially those parts about what happens if you need to end the agreement, culture clash, performance issues, that sort of thing. And regular reviews are key, especially as new partners come in.
Like those building codes, got to make sure the foundation is strong and adapt to changes. Speaking of foundations, how do you even figure out what an architecture firm is worth? It can't be just the value of computers and desks, right?
You're right. It's this mix of tangible and intangible stuff. And goodwill, as we said before, that can be hard to measure.
So how do those valuation experts even approach something like that?
They use a bunch of different methods. For the tangible stuff, they look at financial records, physical assets, the value of projects that are in the pipeline, work that's coming in.
The nuts and bolts of the business, the things you can put a price tag on easily.
Uh,
But then there's that intangible stuff. How do you measure that?
That's where it gets interesting. They look at the firm's reputation, how well known they are, their relationships with clients, their track record, basically. How good are they at getting clients and doing amazing work? It's almost like they're judging the architectural value of the firm itself, not just the buildings it makes.
I bet that involves a lot of research, looking at the whole market.
Oh, absolutely. They look at market trends, compare the firm to similar businesses, figure out how much it could grow. And it's not a perfect science. Different experts might come up with slightly different numbers.
Makes sense. It's a judgment call based on lots of factors. So when's the right time to start thinking about all of this? Can't be a last-minute thing, can it?
Ideally, it's something you're always thinking about, building it into the firm's strategy from day one. But even if a firm hasn't been doing that, it's never too late to start. The key is giving yourself enough time for a thoughtful transition.
How long are we talking? Is there a typical time frame for doing this well?
It depends. How's the firm structured? Are there people ready to step up? What's the market like? But often, 5 to 10 years is a good range to aim for. Gives you time for planning, developing talent, making sure the handover goes smoothly.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about the founder exiting. It's about the firm thriving for years to come. Now, let's talk about the founder's role in all this. This is where it gets personal, right?
Totally. How do founders go from being the leader to maybe a mentor, or even stepping back entirely? That can't be easy.
It's this balancing act that takes self-awareness and understanding how to handle emotions well. Some founders, they're ready to retire completely, relax. Others, they want to stay involved, maybe advise the new team. Open communication is huge here. The founder needs to be clear about what they want after the succession, and the new leaders need to respect that while still establishing their own way of doing things.
It's like a dance,
Yeah.
figuring out the steps together. But what about preserving that founder's legacy? How do you make sure the firm's values, their design style, the culture, that it all stays strong, even with a new leader?
That's where those intangible assets we were talking about come back in. The firm's legacy, it's in its reputation, its brand, the relationships they've built. To keep that going, you need a good plan and to execute it well.
So you're capturing what makes the firm special, in a way.
Exactly. It's about clearly defining those core values, documenting their design approach, and creating a culture that reflects all of that. It's like making a blueprint for the firm's soul.
I like that, a blueprint for the soul. But people don't always like change. How do you deal with that, especially when it's something as big as new leadership?
Resistance to change is totally natural. People get resistant when they feel uncertain or like they're being threatened. The way to handle it is by talking about those fears directly, explaining why the succession is happening, what the good parts are, and addressing what people are worried about.
Paint a picture of the future that's both exciting and reassuring.
Exactly. And getting employees involved in the process can help a lot. Get their input, ask for their feedback, make them feel like they're part of creating the future, not just having it happen to them.
When people feel like they have some ownership, they're more likely to get on board. Speaking of ownership, let's talk about a factor that can be both a good thing and a problem: ego.
Ah, yes, the ego, especially the founder's ego. This firm is their baby. They created it. Letting go can be really tough.
So how do founders manage that ego and make sure the transition goes well? It's not just signing papers, it's letting go emotionally too.
It starts with understanding that succession planning isn't about them, it's about what's best to the firm in the long run. It's recognizing that their biggest legacy is the firm continuing to succeed even when they're not in charge anymore.
It's about being able to step back and see the bigger picture.
And it helps if they have a fulfilling life outside of work, too. Maybe they have hobbies, they want to travel, spend time with family. Having things they're passionate about outside the firm makes it easier to let go.
Now, we talked about mentorship before, but let's dig deeper. How can you structure mentorship so it really prepares those future leaders? It's got to be more than just giving casual advice, right?
Oh, definitely. Mentorship needs to be organized. You need clear goals, expectations, timelines. You're basically creating a roadmap for how someone becomes a leader. First step is matching mentors and mentees carefully. Their personalities need to work well together, their skills, what they want out of their careers, it all has to align.
Like matching an architect to the right project, got to consider their strengths and what the project needs.
Exactly. Then you set up clear ways to communicate and you dedicate time for them to meet and talk. They could talk about trends in the industry, analyze case studies, even do role playing for tough situations, or just have someone to bounce ideas off of. It's about being flexible and adapting it to each person.
A custom learning experience?
Yeah.
That's cool. But what about when you get to the money part? How do you decide what's fair for the outgoing leader and the new ones? That's a conversation that could get awkward fast.
It can be. It takes a lot of thought, balancing fairness with what's actually possible. First, you got to look at the firm's finances. Can they afford to compensate both sides well?
You don't want to create a succession plan that bankrupts the firm in the process.
Right. Then you think about what the founder's role is worth, their experience, and compare it to similar jobs in the industry.
You're looking at what the market says those roles are worth.
Exactly. Then factor in what the new leadership brings. Do they have the skills and experience to move the firm forward? It's about recognizing what the founder did, but also the potential of the new team.
It's a delicate dance, that's for sure. And I bet those conversations can get pretty emotional, even if everyone agrees on the big picture.
Absolutely right. Succession planning, it's not just numbers and contracts. It's about human emotions. Change, especially at the leadership level, it can make people uneasy. Employees worry about their jobs, clients about their projects, and founders, they might wrestle with feelings of loss, nostalgia.
So how do you handle all that emotional stuff? It's not like you can just send out a memo saying, don't worry, be happy.
Leaders have to show empathy. They have to understand. They need to create an environment where people feel safe talking about their concerns and then reassure them about the future. It's acknowledging that change impacts people and offering support.
So it's about being human-centered, even when you're talking business decisions. What about that feeling some founders have, like they're becoming irrelevant? It's not just the firm. It's their own identity, their purpose.
That fear of being forgotten, it's very real. It starts with recognizing their legacy is more than just their job at the firm. It's the impact they've had on clients, employees, even just through their work, the world around them.
It's about seeing those buildings they designed, the communities they've shaped, the people whose lives are better because of their work.
Exactly. And it's about finding new ways to contribute. Mentoring younger architects, getting involved with community groups, pursuing creative passions they might have put aside. There are so many ways to stay engaged and make a difference.
It's finding that next chapter, not just closing the book on their career.
Right. And embracing change is key. Don't see retirement as the end. See it as a new beginning, a chance to explore, learn, connect, write a whole new chapter in their story.
So they're not holding on to the past, they're looking forward to what's next.
Exactly. And staying connected is important too. Connected to the community, the industry, even the firm if it feels right.
Not cutting ties completely, finding a new way to be involved.
That's the idea. It could be going to events, mentoring, staying in touch with colleagues, even being on the firm's board. It's about finding ways to stay engaged and keep sharing their knowledge.
Now let's talk about something a bit tricky, what some call the founder's shadow.
Ah, yes. Even when the founder steps back, their presence, their influence, it's still there. Sometimes, that's a good thing, provides continuity, stability. But sometimes it can be too much. It makes it hard for the new team to really lead.
Like a ghost in the machine still kind of running things.
You could say that. The key here is balance. Both the founder and the new leadership have to be aware of this dynamic and work together so it's a healthy balance.
So the founder's legacy inspires, but it doesn't overshadow the firm's future.
Right. And setting boundaries helps a lot. Both sides need to be clear about what their roles are, what they're responsible for.
So defining how much involvement is the right amount. The founder needs to let go, trust the new team, and that new team needs to feel like they can make decisions.
Exactly. But for founders, that fear of failure can creep in, especially as they see the firm changing, going in new directions. It's natural to worry that the firm you built might not do well under new leadership.
It's like watching your kid go out into the world. You want them to succeed, but you can't control everything.
Exactly. Succession planning, it's not about guaranteeing success. It's about minimizing risk. No business can be 100% certain of success. But with careful planning, developing strong leaders, and a company culture that can adapt, that increases the chances of the firm doing well.
So you're setting the firm up for success, even if you can't predict every little thing that'll happen.
And accepting that you can't know everything is a big part of this. Change is going to happen. Letting go of control, that's not a weakness, it's being smart. It's trusting the process, trusting the team, and trusting that the firm will find its own way, even if it looks different than what the founder imagined.
It's trusting the design, even if you're not the one holding the pencil anymore.
You got it. And having a growth mindset helps a lot too. It's about being open to challenges, learning from when things don't go perfectly, and always looking for ways to improve.
So it's about believing that the firm and the people in it, they can keep evolving and getting better.
Right. And to do that, you have to be open to feedback. It's easy to get defensive when you're used to being in charge, but feedback, it's valuable. It helps you see things from different angles and do things better.
Shifting from thinking I know best to I'm always learning.
Now, let's talk about legacy building. It's about making sure the founder's work, what they've contributed, is remembered.
So it's not just about what happens to the firm, but the founder's place in that story.
Exactly. It could involve writing down their design philosophy, mentoring, setting up scholarships, maybe even writing their memoirs. It's about passing on their knowledge and inspiring the next generation, like leaving behind a set of blueprints that others can learn from and build on.
Love that analogy.
Right.
And alongside legacy building, often comes this desire to give back.
Right. You're right. As founders get closer to retirement, many of them want to give back to the community, the industry, causes they care about. Succession planning can be a way to include that.
So it's about using their success to make a positive impact beyond just the firm.
Exactly. Maybe it's being on a nonprofit board, mentoring new entrepreneurs, donating to charities. It's about taking their experience and resources and doing good.
Now, we can't talk about succession without talking about the big one, family businesses. Things get complicated when it's family involved, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Emotions are stronger, personal relationships get mixed up with business decisions, setting clear boundaries and treating family members professionally like any other employee, that's super important.
So no special treatment just because you're passing the mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving.
Right. But even with the best intentions, family businesses, they can run into succession disputes.
And those disputes can get nasty, right? It's not just business, it's family history and legacy all tangled up. What usually causes those fights to break out?
It often comes down to disagreements about who should be in charge, how ownership is split up, when the transition should happen, even just what direction the firm should go in. It's this mix of emotions, ambition, and wanting to protect their legacy, all rolled into one.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster. How do you keep those disputes from tearing the family and the firm apart?
You gotta have open, honest communication. Make a space where everyone can say what they're thinking and feeling respectfully, even when they don't agree. And listening is just as important as talking.
So it's about creating an environment where everyone feels heard, understood, even if you don't see eye to eye on everything.
Exactly. And sometimes bringing in someone from outside, a neutral third party, can make a huge difference. Someone who can guide the conversation without picking sides or getting caught up in the family drama.
Like having a mediator, someone to keep things fair and make sure everyone's following the rules.
Great analogy. But even when everyone means well, family businesses can still have those succession fights.
Those fights can be rough. It's not just about money or who's the boss, It's family history. It's their legacy. Those wounds can take a long time to heal. What are some of the things that usually set those conflicts off?
Often, it's disagreements about who should lead the company, how to divide up ownership, when the transition should happen, even what the firm should focus on in the future. It's like this big knot of feelings, ambition, and wanting to protect what they've built all mixed together.
Sounds like a recipe for trouble. How do you stop those disputes from becoming all-out family feuds?
Again, communication is key. Everyone in the family needs to be able to say what they think and feel respectfully, even when they don't agree. And listening to each other is just as important as speaking up.
So it's about creating a space where everyone feels heard and understood, even if they don't agree on everything.
You got it. And sometimes having someone from outside the family come in and help can be a game changer. Someone neutral, like a mediator, can guide the conversation without taking sides or getting tangled up in the family dynamics.
It's like bringing in an architect to settle a design argument. They can see the potential in different ideas and help everyone come up with a plan that works.
That's a great way to put it. And throughout all these tough conversations, it's crucial to remind everyone that the most important thing is that the family business does well. They need to put their personal differences aside and focus on making sure their shared legacy continues to be successful.
Remember, you're all on the same team, even when it feels like you're fighting against each other.
Now let's switch gears and talk about those incoming leaders, the next generation stepping up to take charge. They have their own unique challenges to deal with.
It can't be easy following in the footsteps of a founder who built a successful business, especially when that founder is also your parent or grandparent. How do you handle those expectations and lead with confidence?
First, it's important to understand that you don't have to be just like the founder. You can bring your own skills, your own vision, your own leadership style to the table.
So it's about respecting the past, but also shaping the future in your own way.
Exactly. You're the next evolution of the firm, not just a copy of what came before.
Kind of like taking the original blueprint and updating it for a new generation, adding your own design touches while keeping the basic structure intact.
I like that. That's a great way to think about it. And building a strong support system is really important too. Find mentors who can guide you, colleagues you can collaborate with, and family and friends who can offer emotional support.
Having a good team around you can make all the difference when you're navigating uncharted territory.
That's right. And don't forget about your own strengths. What are you naturally good at? What are you passionate about? Use those strengths to your advantage as a leader.
So it's about knowing your own style as a leader and finding people who can help you bring that vision to life.
Exactly. Now, how do you build trust when you're the new person in charge, especially when you're also part of the family?
That's got to be tough. People might wonder if you're qualified if you got the job just because of your family connections. How do you prove yourself?
It starts with being authentic. Be yourself. Be genuine. Let people see your passion for the firm and for its future.
Lead with your heart, not just your family name.
Exactly. And back that up with competence. Make good decisions, communicate clearly, and get things done. Show them that you're not just coasting on your family connections, you have the skills and the drive to lead.
Let your actions speak louder than any whispers about you getting special treatment.
Right. And never underestimate the power of listening. And I mean really listening, not just hearing what people are saying. It's about trying to understand their perspectives, their concerns, and their hopes for the future.
It's about showing empathy and making those human connections, not just treating people like employees or family members.
Exactly. When people feel like they're being heard and understood, they're more likely to trust you, no matter what your last name is.
It's about building bridges, not walls.
Now, communication is crucial in any kind of succession plan, but it's especially important in a family business where emotions are already running high.
What are some key strategies for communicating effectively when you're transitioning a family business to new leadership?
Openness, honesty, and transparency are essential. Keep everyone informed about the plan, the timeline, and who's responsible for what. The more information you share, the less uncertainty and anxiety there will be.
So it's about communicating proactively, not waiting for people to come to you with questions or concerns.
Right. And create opportunities for dialogue. Encourage people to ask questions, share their feedback, and even express their disagreements, as long as they do it respectfully.
It's about creating a culture where people feel comfortable speaking their minds.
Yes, and be mindful of how you're communicating. For big announcements, email or company-wide meetings might be best, but for more sensitive conversations, one-on-one talks or small group meetings can create a safer space.
So use the right communication style for the situation and the people involved.
Exactly. And be ready to deal with rumors. Family businesses can be breeding grounds for gossip, especially during times of change.
It seems like the rumor mill spins even faster when everyone's related. How do you handle that?
Don't ignore rumors and hope they'll go away. Address them head on. Acknowledge the rumors, provide accurate information, and reinforce the firm's commitment to transparency.
So it's about taking control of the story and making sure the truth is getting out there.
Right. And having a strong culture of trust helps a lot too. When people trust their leaders, they're less likely to believe gossip or spread rumors.
They'll come to you for information, not to the office gossip chain.
Now, in the middle of all the serious stuff, don't forget to celebrate.
We've talked about celebrating milestones in general, but are there certain celebrations that are especially important in a family business?
Absolutely. Celebrating successes together strengthens family bonds and creates positive memories during a time that can be pretty stressful. It could be something as simple as a family dinner to mark the official leadership change, or a company-wide event that honors what multiple generations have built.
It's about finding those moments to come together and appreciate the journey, both where you've been and where you're going.
That's it. And with celebrations comes the chance to thank you. Thank the founder for their vision, thank earlier generations for their sacrifices, and thank everyone for their hard work and dedication in making the firm successful.
It's about recognizing that shared history and showing appreciation for everyone who helped build it.
Exactly. And don't forget about people's emotions during all of this. Succession planning in a family business can be a real emotional roller coaster.
There are going to be worries, disagreements, and maybe even some hurt feelings along the way.
Encourage everyone to take care of themselves. Take breaks, do things that bring you joy and help you relax, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. It's okay to acknowledge that this is a challenging time and to reach out for support.
So taking care of yourself is just as important as taking care of the business. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're wrapping up our look at succession planning in architecture firms. And this time, we're zeroing in on a situation that adds a whole new level of complexity to family businesses.
Yeah, family dynamics, they bring a whole other set of factors to consider. Emotions are more intense, personal relationships and business decisions get all tangled up, and that idea of legacy, it becomes even more personal.
It's not just about contracts and the bottom line. It's family history, dreams, maybe even some good old-fashioned sibling rivalry thrown in.
You got it. And all those principles we've talked about, communication, trust, fairness, they're even more crucial when it's a family business.
So where do you even start when it's not just business partners, but your aunt, your brother, your cousin sitting across from you at the table?
The foundation's the same, open, honest communication. But with family, you really got to make sure everyone feels safe to say what they think, how they feel, even if it's messy, even if it clashes with what others want.
It's like those family dinners where everyone's trying to be on their best behavior, but you can tell there's some stuff bubbling under the surface. Got to let that steam out somehow.
Exactly. And sometimes it helps to bring in someone from the outside. A mediator, a consultant who specializes in family businesses, someone who can help guide the conversation without taking sides or getting caught in the family drama.
Like a referee, making sure everyone's playing fair and by the rules.
Perfect analogy. But even when everyone's trying their best, family businesses can still have these big blow-ups over succession.
And those fights can be brutal. It's not just about who gets what, it's about history, legacy. Those scars can run deep. What are some of the things that usually set those conflicts off?
A lot of times, it's disagreements about who should be the leader, how to split up ownership when the transition should actually happen, even just what the firm should focus on in the future. It's emotions, ambitions, and that deep desire to protect what they've built all smashed together.
Sounds like a recipe for a major meltdown. How do you stop those disputes from turning into full-blown family wars?
Communication, communication, communication. Everyone needs to feel like they can speak their mind respectfully, even when they disagree. And listening to each other is just as important as talking.
So it's about creating an environment where everyone feels heard and respected, even if they don't see eye to eye on everything.
Right. And sometimes bringing in that outside expert, that neutral party, can really help unlock those tough conversations and find solutions that everyone can live with.
It's like bringing in an architect to mediate a design dispute. They can see the good in different ideas and help blend them together into a plan that works.
That's a great way to put it. And when you're having these tough talks, it's important to remind everyone that the main goal is for the family business to do well. They need to put their personal differences aside and focus on what's best for the company in the long run.
Got to remember, you're all on the same team, even when it feels like you're on opposite sides.
Now, let's shift gears and talk about those incoming leaders, the next generation who are stepping up to take charge. They've got their own set of challenges to face.
It can't be easy taking over for a founder who built a successful business, especially when that founder is also your mom, your dad, your grandma, grandpa. How do you handle those expectations and find the confidence to lead?
It's important to realize that you don't have to be exactly like the founder. You can bring your own unique skills, your own vision, your own way of leading to the firm.
So it's about respecting the past, but also shaping the future in your own way.
Exactly. You're not just a copy of what came before, you're the next step in the firm's evolution.
Like taking the original blueprint and updating it for a new generation, maybe adding some modern touches while still keeping the main structure strong.
I like that analogy. It's a great way to think about it. And finding a good support system is crucial too. Look for mentors who can offer guidance, colleagues who you can collaborate with, and family and friends who can offer emotional support.
Having a good team around you makes all the difference, especially when you're navigating uncharted waters.
That's right. And don't forget about your own strengths. What are you naturally good at? What are you passionate about? Use those strengths to your advantage as a leader.
So it's about knowing your own leadership style and building a team that can help you bring that vision to life.
Exactly. Now, how do you build trust when you're the new person in charge, especially when you're also a member of the family?
That can't be easy. People might doubt your qualifications, wonder if you got the job just because of your family connections. How do you overcome that?
It starts with being authentic. Be yourself. Be genuine. Don't try to be someone you're not. Let people see how passionate you are about the firm and its future.
Lead with your heart, not just your family name.
Exactly, and back that up with competence.
Yeah.
Make good decisions, communicate clearly, and get things done. Show them you're not just coasting on your family name. You have the skills and the drive to lead.
Like your actions speak louder than any whispers about favoritism.
Right. And never underestimate the power of listening. And I mean really listening, not just hearing what people say. It's about trying to understand their perspectives, their concerns, and what they hope for the future.
It's about empathy and connecting with people on a human level, not just treating them like employees or family members.
Exactly. When people feel like they're being heard and understood, they're more likely to trust you, no matter what your last name is.
It's about building bridges instead of walls.
Now, we've talked about how communication is key in any succession plan, but it's especially important in family businesses where things are already emotionally charged.
What are some good strategies for communicating effectively when a family business is going through a leadership transition?
Openness, honesty, and transparency are absolutely essential. Keep everyone in the loop about the plan, the timeline, and who's going to be doing what. The more information you share, the less uncertainty and anxiety there will be.
So it's about communicating proactively, not waiting for people to come to you with questions or concerns.
Right, and make sure there are opportunities for dialogue. Encourage people to ask questions, share feedback, and even voice disagreements, as long as it's done respectfully.
It's about creating a culture where people feel comfortable speaking their minds.
Exactly. And think about how you communicate, too. For big announcements, email or company-wide meetings might be best. But for more sensitive conversations, one-on-one talks or small group meetings can feel safer and more personal.
So use the right communication style depending on what you're talking about and who you're talking to.
Right, and be ready to deal with rumors. Family businesses can be hotbeds for gossip, especially when things are changing.
It seems like the rumor mill churns even faster when everyone's related. How do you manage that effectively?
Don't just ignore rumors and hope they'll go away. Address them head on. Acknowledge the rumor, provide accurate information, and make it clear that the firm is committed to transparency.
So it's about getting out in front of the story and making sure people have the right information.
Exactly. And if you have a strong culture of trust, that's your best defense against rumors. When people trust their leaders, they're less likely to believe gossip or spread unfounded rumors.
They'll come to you for the facts, not to the office rumor mill.
Right. Now, in the middle of all this serious business, don't forget to celebrate.
We talked earlier about celebrating milestones.
Hmm.
Are there any celebrations that are especially meaningful in a family business?
Definitely. Celebrating successes together is a great way to strengthen those family bonds and create positive memories during a time that can be full of tension. It could be something simple, like a family dinner to celebrate the official handover of leadership, or a company-wide event that honors the contributions of different generations.
It's about coming together and appreciating how far you've come and where you're going.
Yes, and celebrations also provide a chance to show gratitude. Thank the founder for their vision, previous generations for their sacrifices, and everyone who's worked hard to make the firm successful.
It's about recognizing and honoring everything that everyone's contributed to the firm's legacy.
Exactly. And don't forget to pay attention to the emotional well-being of everyone involved. Succession planning in a family business can be a real emotional roller coaster.
There are bound to be some anxieties, disagreements, and maybe even hurt feelings along the way.
Encourage everyone to prioritize self-care. Take breaks, do things that make you happy and help you relax, and don't be afraid to ask for support when you need it. It's okay to admit that it's tough and to reach out for help.
So taking care of yourself is just as important as taking care of the business. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into succession planning, especially those tricky family-run businesses. It's obvious that it's so much more than just handing over the keys. It's about carefully planning for the firm's future and making sure that legacy carries on for generations to come.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between the business side and the human side, figuring out those complicated family dynamics, and making sure the firm's future is as solid as its foundation.
We've covered a lot, the strategic stuff, the financial side, the legal aspects, even the emotional stuff that comes with succession planning.
And it all comes back to people. Architecture is a service industry, and people are its most valuable resource.
Couldn't agree more. As we wrap up, it makes me think about the future of architecture itself. Technology is changing so fast, new design trends are always popping up. How will succession planning need to adapt so these firms not only survive, but really thrive in the years ahead? Something to think about, isn't it? Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.